is Mabel Vincent, and I decided to do crepes for my second food presentation. So the history of crepes, it was born in Brittany, France in the 13th century, and supposedly a woman who was cooking for her family porridge spilled it on a hot pan, and the pan cooked the porridge and made it into a crepe. And she tried the crepe, and then the crepe was born. Crepe comes from a Latin word crispus, which means crisp, which makes sense because it's, I guess, like a crispy pancake, a thin, crispy pancake. And then on February 2nd is Le Jour de Crepes, which is a Catholic holiday to celebrate the purification of Virgin Mary. And continuing about February 2nd, Le Jour de Crepes, it's also, they eat lots of crepes on this day, and they fortune tell while eating the crepes. So it's, you hold a coin in one of your hands and a crepe pan in the other. And then when you flip the crepe using just like your hand in the pan, like no tools, if you catch the crepe, it's said that your family will prosper for the rest of the year. So, it's kind of a cultural thing to eat crepes and flip them, try to catch them on February 2nd. And then when it was discovered, culturally, wasting anything, particularly food, was very unheard of, and you didn't waste food. So when she dropped the porridge onto the hot pan, she ate the porridge that had been cooked, because you don't waste food, and that's also how the crepe was born. And then also culturally, originally the sweet crepe was with lemon sugar filling, and a savory crepe had ham, eggs, and cheese, but now it can be found with almost anything you want, jam, nut spreads like Nutella or peanut butter or fruit, many things like that. The ingredients, this recipe was called the basic crepe. It had 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 eggs, half a cup of milk, half a cup of water, a fourth a teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. This recipe had all-purpose flour. Another recipe I'll talk about in a second had buckwheat flour, so that also can change what's next, the nutrition composition. So here, for the nutrition composition of that particular crepe, it was 216 calories, 7.4 grams of protein, 25.5 grams of carbohydrates, 9.2 grams of fat, 110.7 milligrams of cholesterol, and 235.3 milligrams of sodium. So in terms of the relationship to disease, the website that I found that talked about the relationship to disease for crepes had buckwheat flour in their recipe, and it was only a 90-calorie crepe opposed to a 216-calorie crepe, which greatly changes its nutritional value. So here they stated that it's not a bad choice for a meal, and so that depends on what flour they're made out of, and also what you cook them in, because they cooked it in butter or oil or other fats like that. So it depends on what recipe you use and how you cook them, the relationship to disease. It also depends on what you fill them with. Nutella has more calories than just strawberries. If you fill them with like whipped cream, like that's less calories than Nutella. It greatly depends on what you fill them with. It also depends on how often you eat them. So if you eat them every single day, that would be different from if it was just something you ate every other week. So agriculturally, it said that there is a warmer climate that is needed for the wheat to grow to make the flour, and it was like 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And it also said that in America there are 2 seasons for wheat to be grown, spring and winter, with 2 different varieties. And then we talked about the different kinds of flour, and they have different nutritional compositions. So a typical white flour would just have the endosperm, if you look at this picture, and the bran and germ would be taken away. And the bran and germ have a lot of nutritional value. So in wheat flour, all 3 are there, which change nutrients, color, and other different things. So agriculturally, flour can be many, many different kinds of flour, like cake flour, bread flour, whole wheat flour, all-purpose flour, white flour, stuff like that, with different amounts of sugar in them, or salt or leavening agents to change nutritional value. So for the recipe, this is the same recipe as the one that was 216 calories. It said you would mix or whisk together the eggs and flour. Then you would add in slowly the milk and water, and finally the salt and butter, and mix those until they were combined evenly. And then you would oil or butter a pan and pour the batter into the pan. It said about 1/4 of a cup of batter. And then you would swirl the pan to coat almost the entire pan with a very thin coat of batter. And then you would cook for around 2 minutes on one of the sides and flip with a spatula, or if you want to use the tradition of the day of crepes, flip it just with the pan. And the other side will cook more quickly than the first side, and it should be golden brown. For tasting, I really enjoyed the crepe. I really like pancakes, and it was just a thin pancake, and I thought that it was really cool. You could put different things in it to change it to be what you'd like, especially like sweet or savory. And my crepe was filled with chocolate, strawberries, and it was like a Cool Whip almost. So here's my crepe. You can see the chocolate like on the side and the Cool Whip in the middle, and it was just rolled up. You can find them rolled like this, or sometimes they're folded into like a triangle. And then you have some strawberries likely covered with sugar because you can see the liquid coming from the strawberries. And here are my references.